Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. I am a sales coach and trainer, and I work with both individuals and organizations to help them do one thing and one thing only: get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales and to help you generate more income for yourself. Every Friday, if you've joined us before, you know that at 10 a.m. Eastern, we either do a live training or I bring you somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And once again, my friends, today is no exception. Today's guest is the founder of Apex Conversion and Nate Morse Consulting. He empowers salespeople and business leaders to harness the immense potential of LinkedIn. And I have to tell you that I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I get 30% of my business from it, and I consider it the salesperson's best friend. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to today's guest, Nate Morse. Good morning, Nate.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Glad to be here.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely. Hey, Nate, before we get started with the 1,000,001 questions I have about LinkedIn for you, could you maybe share the 1 or 2 minute background or 3 minute background of what brought you up to this point?
Yep. If you can share that, that little slide that we have here. Okay, so at a top level, I help people get more leads, calls, and clients. But what I have figured out over the last 7 years is that they need 3 things on LinkedIn. They need really focused targeting, because if we don't have the right people in our audience or that we're reaching out to, none of that, none of the rest matters. And that focus target gives us the ability to do irresistible personalization, where we can make things relevant to them and drive urgency so that they can become clients or make sales, whatever we're doing. And then unstoppable results. I'm huge on data and finding the low-hanging fruit in LinkedIn, and then also using the data that comes from your content, your outreach, all of that to actually circumvent and create like a rapidly optimizing ecosystem. Now, what drives me is that I believe that revolutionary industry leaders, so people that are bringing some to the market to make an impact, they deserve to enjoy every client. And the reason of that is that the biggest change makers of the world are entrepreneurs. And so if we look at that and we look at the clients actually make the business through their feedback and referrals and whatnot, the quality of clients is potentially the most important variable in the entire world. So I'm really big on focusing on the best clients possible and making sure that those are the ones that we're acquiring, because I think those move the business forward the most.
Awesome. Love that. So almost everyone I know, this audience is salespeople and sales managers. Almost all sellers are interested in developing new business. And in order to do that, we first have to make contact with qualified prospects. In a recent article, you gave your top 10 tips for acquiring new clients, and I'd like to delve into a couple of them. The first one was targeted market research. You say that not understanding your market is the number one reason that businesses fail. Is target market research the same as customer mapping? Because I know you're big on that. And how can we use LinkedIn to research our target market, and what should we be looking for?
Yeah. So I don't believe that it is the same as customer mapping, because I believe customer mapping is once we know who we're talking to, that's more of the what and the how. But really figuring out the who is the most important. And then I know that you wanted me to mention how to use it on LinkedIn. What was the second one? You gave me 3 there.
Well, I want to know, is it the same as customer mapping, which you say it's not? Oh. How can we use LinkedIn to research our target market, and what should we be looking for in our target market, or in the type of people we want to go after?
Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. So, yeah, essentially what happened is that after working with clients for a long time, and I realized that even other acquisition companies that I go to basically would start with, hey, who do you want to go after? And then what do you want to say? And then the company does their best effort to make that happen, right? But what I realized is that a lot of times, especially if they've been growing on referrals or they've been going after a certain path for a long time, that may not be where the actual opportunities lie. So if a campaign doesn't work, then whose fault is it? And what I notice is that the most reason businesses fail, which is basically in their marketing and sales, but the reason that they fail is that they didn't do their target market research. So they're not looking at where the opportunities are. Now on LinkedIn, an example, and we go pretty deep. We have like data analysts that we've hired to create processes and things for this. But on a level, you could use Sales Navigator, and you could see, okay, within this umbrella of people that you can work with, try to find the subgroups underneath, and then look at how many of them are on LinkedIn. Look at how the industry is how it's trending to project. So you might have to look off of LinkedIn to find what's the projection for that industry and look between them, but also see, like Sales Navigator, one thing that's cool is you can see if people are active, if they're posting, which is not like the only thing that they can do if they're active, because not everybody is posting. But that is a great way to start and see, okay, which group under everyone that I can go to has the most potential. And so I like to find the best ones and then start testing between those to see how they react to our approach.
Yeah, I love using that filter in Navigator. Who's been posting within the last 30 days. I mean, you're the expert, but I believe there's over 1 billion people on LinkedIn right now, but they're not all active all the time. And it's smarter to target people who are active on LinkedIn if we expect to reach them. Yes.
Yeah, and they just crossed 1 billion. So yeah, you're right on with that. And yeah, if they're just using it as a resume and they don't log in, basically at the end of the day, if they don't see your messages, they don't see your content, nothing's going to happen, right? So, and that's actually an issue with Sales Navigator and LinkedIn search in general, is that a lot of the search results are not what you were looking for. I don't know if you've also noticed that, but there's a lot of things in the searches that are not that relevant. And so that's, I think, an issue that people do is they might even find the right group to go after, but then they might just plug it into Sales Navigator, throw it in a tool and tell it to start reaching out to them. But, the 60% of that might be fat stuff that's not the right people, right? So that on its own is going to create another issue within there. So just keep in mind on that.
Because if you're not trying to attract too broad an audience, it's not really your target market. You're wasting a lot of time and effort. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, but even if you go and search for specific job titles and stuff in LinkedIn, it'll show you people that don't fit that as well in the search. So the target market research of identifying the initial numbers, yes, but just make sure you're diligent in terms of who you're actually reaching out to from that list. That's the caveat with Sales Navigator and LinkedIn search.
Gotcha. Okay. And one of the other tips in your top 10 was to make sure that your profile is optimized. What are the things that we should be doing to optimize our profile so that we're speaking directly to our target market?
Yeah. And I love that you check this out, by the way, that you're bringing questions from here. This is great. I love this. So the biggest issue that I see is that when someone has a profile, originally it was just a resume, and then they try to turn it into the resume of the business version, which is more like a brochure. And the thing about brochures is they're mostly designed to give a call to action for when someone is ready to buy, right? But what I've noticed is that, let's say that you had a job, because like at one point I was a car salesman doing in-person sales, and then later I became an entrepreneur helping big ticket companies like that with their websites and doing conversion optimization on there. And I noticed that less than 1% of people become leads that visit the virtual lot, but in person, I could take down pretty much everyone's wants and needs and everything. Now, the issue is that basically that's where I think the current stage of like the internet is mostly, is saying that you exist, and then they're trying to generate attention. So what you can do with your profile, to go back to that, is instead of just focusing on it being something that makes you the expert, so when they're ready to buy, they come from you, create things in there that reach out to them at the different stages they're at, which is where customer mapping comes into play. So what are their internal questions that they have to answer before they can buy? So going back to the car example, or going to a car example, people have to look for, is this the best car? Is this the best one for me? Is this the right one for my family? Am I getting a good deal? They have all these questions that they can answer before they actually are going to go to that stage of, hey, I want to have a sales conversation, right? So how can we be the guide in the buyer's journey, helping them? Because as you guys have probably experienced, the earlier you get into the sales process with someone, the more control and whatnot that you have throughout the sales process, versus just coming in at the very end where, they already have other people on the short list that may have been helping them for a longer time earlier. So that's the thing, is making sure the profile has reasons for them to connect with you that are relevant to where they're at in the buyer's journey. And it's not just a brochure or basically just another resume. Does that make sense?
Are you talking about in the about section? I mean, where do we actually do that?
Yeah. So overall, I mean, the whole thing, but a good example of that I see is that bio tagline. And that shows when you post content, it shows when you comment on something, it shows when people search you. And a lot of people will put there like, hey, LinkedIn expert or sales expert or whatever, and they'll focus on that. But instead, you could potentially put like a lead magnet in there that's for someone literally working through that buyer's journey. right? So that's just one example. And that one lead magnet can help answer that one question. You could have different lead magnets that answer all the different pieces. You can have content that answers all of it and have them in different sections of like your featured. You can even add them in the experience. You can put them in the about. Now the about, I think, is a little bit different, because I think when they're in the buyer's journey, the about stage is where they're like, okay, I actually want to take some time to really understand what's going on here. And so that one can be much longer and more focused at them actually talking to you. But you could have different call to actions that you say throughout the about section that can be relevant to other areas as well.
And I mean, is it okay to leave the standard LinkedIn banner, or should we be customizing that? And is that another place where we can be sending that communication to our prospective customer?
Yeah, definitely. That's, basically the second thing that they look at after they hop onto your profile. So, and always be testing. I always am big on testing. So definitely test to see what works better or not. And because you guys have a different market and they have different perspectives, than even, each other, just because you guys are in different industries and you're different people and whatnot. So depending on, if you're talking to someone and they're more focused on family, you might show the lifestyle that they want, right? And that might actually be the thing that's helping. But it's good to have some wording on there to help them understand what you do, and then maybe have like one lead magnet in there as well.
Got it. And you said that the banner picture is the second thing they look at. Is the first one the profile picture?
Yeah, it's mostly the profile picture. Gotcha.
And any tips on that? I know I see a lot of different things in profile pictures. For me, and you're the expert, I'm not, but some guy holding up a fish, to me, that's a Facebook photo. That doesn't really belong on LinkedIn. Any tips for what we should be posting for a profile picture?
Yeah, I think there's a fine line in there, because we don't want to be holding up a fish unless you're in like a fishing industry. Then sure, have it like next to your face. So they can see your face at least, especially if it's a zoomed out one with you and they can't see your face or any facial expressions. That's not going to be what you want to go to. But on the other extreme is the like classic headshot that someone takes for their first job that a lot of people have on there, right? Where they're sitting in there in the suit with the white background and everybody knows what that looks like, right? So we don't want that. We want something that is in between, that is mostly a headshot of just you and they can see your facial expression. So it should be pretty much focused around the face, but mess with the colors a little bit so that they're not just, the LinkedIn colors, that they actually stand out on the, conversion side. Even your profile picture will stick out in, your posts and different things like that.
Gotcha. Note to self: I need to change my profile picture because it is my standard headshot.
Oh, you do have
it's my standard headshot with in a suit and tie with a smiling face, even though I don't wear suits anymore. All right, I have some work to do.
Maybe that works best for you though. You know what I mean? You just have to test it.
I was just going to say the only way I'll know is testing it, and that's what I do with the banner underneath. I change the wording there from time to time to see what's getting better attraction. As opposed to you doing content marketing or placing ads, you suggest that we need to embrace the outreach and to speak directly to our target audiences, their needs and their interests. What should we be saying when we use direct outreach? Because I know, and you call it pitch slapping, which I do too. I hate when I connect with somebody and I immediately get, hey, Jeff, I'd love to talk to you about all the great ways I can help coaches like you get more leads. It annoys the crap out of me. So what can we say when we use direct outreach without seeming like a predator? And how can we make our outreach more relevant and drive urgency?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't like pitch slapping either. It feels to me, and I think, and I'd be curious if you agree, but I feel like most of sales is very similar to dating. So I use a lot of similarities between the two, and you probably do too, right?
I say it all the time, Nate. Does she like me? Does she like me enough to go out with me again? Does she like me enough to close the deal?
Yeah. And so if the first thing you say when you walk up to someone is, hey, here's all the reasons that we should get married, like, I don't think that's going to work that well. And even if it does, that might not be a good fit, right? Because there's no rapport, there's nothing in there. But like I was saying with the brochure, a lot of people are, okay, this is the information on my profile. I need to do outreach and get more awareness on my offers. And so they just play that game, which doesn't work that well. But just like in dating, instead of approaching them with, hey, here's about me, I like to focus on what are the right questions to ask, because two reasons. First, in like dating, if you ask someone a question, you're in the spotlight for what they're focusing on, right? But they're actually the ones that get to talk about themselves, which is what they like the most, right? So that is much better. And the reason for that, or I guess the second thing is that I've noticed is that opt-ins work, but the better clients that you're going after, which we're focused on getting the best clients, whales don't jump through hoops as much. So the opt-ins don't convert nearly as high as if you can get in the right conversation with the right person. And I can do much more if someone's telling me their challenges and what they are facing than I can if they give me their email address. I can do way more with that in a sales conversation. So that's the goal that that I focus on, is sparking that conversation with people.
Yeah, my question is really around how do we actually do that, though? Because I know I get people who the ones who do not just say, "Hey, Jeff, I want to talk to you about how I help coaches get more leads." They'll start out with, "How are you today?" Really, I know what you really want. When you ask, you don't really care how I am. You're trying to engage me in a conversation so that eventually you can get to the point where you ask me about, do I want to work with you to get more leads? And if I ask you, even if I, let's say you're a vice president of sales and I sell services to vice president of sales, and I go, how's business? You know where I'm going. So is there a way that we can engage people in that kind of conversation without being so obvious?
Yeah. And the way that that happens is actually the setup before you ask those questions. And don't ask those questions, ask better questions. But the setup will actually allow you to ask more relevant questions. But the setup that I like to use, and this comes back from when I was cold calling, I realized at one point that if I knew something about them, then they would be like, oh, this guy isn't just calling me from a list. So how do you make it feel that they're not being reached out to from a list? Right. And that's the real thing. And so so we do a bunch of stuff of finding what are like psychographic markers that show that they've done something. So they might have like engaged on a website, or they might have posted something, or they might have engaged in something else, or what have you. And so mentioning that specific thing in the connection note or the first message helps a ton, because now there's a relevant thing that we both have. You basically are getting the rapport and piggybacking on the thing that they were engaging with. So now you're like in that group. So you're not just a cold guy anymore. Once that happens, then I like to ask them, what are the challenges or topics around that they're currently facing? But the reason for that I'll use is that I'm building my content calendar. So I'm actually looking for topics. And then what that does is I log those questions, and that builds out my content calendar. And I have a living, constantly updated buyer's journey, so that I know what questions they're facing. So I have my content, and then you're engaged. If they tell you their challenge or question, you should be able to do a lot with that.
Got it. So am I correct? It's far better to take the time to do the research and possibly reach out to less people than reach out to tons and tons of people where it's not targeted. I know that one of the services I provide for companies is sometimes outsourced sales management. And I'm managing a couple of teams right now, and they're just having a horrible time on the phone doing cold calling, which I still believe works. But we were doing let's try to get everybody. And I'm finding that when we make less calls but do more research first, we're getting a much better connection rate. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be where you're doing. I mean, you can scale good strategies as long as you have the right operations behind it. But I think the focus of going broad versus narrow is really limiting, because the messaging and your approach and what you're saying to each person and how you follow up is going to be much more vague than if you focus on a specific group, right? So it's not so much the, hey, because we're focusing on a bigger group in terms of who we're reaching out to, it's more of that it's going to convert less for everybody. So if you narrow down, I like to say that like relevancy drives urgency. And so if you narrow down, then you should have much more, your messaging and all your elements and everything you do should be much more relevant to that person. And if you're speaking to, a bunch of different buyers' journeys, you're not really going to be, or if it's just a vague buyer's journey, it's not really going to, drive that urgency with them, is what I've noticed.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of finding out, the people that I'm trying to reach out to, what can I learn about them before I actually reach out to them? So maybe I'm going to reach out to less, and instead of, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. In fact, I know that where you live right now, you've got something going on with like lots and lots of, not people, but do you want to share a little bit what we were talking about before?
Yeah. So it's like the cicada apocalypse. I don't think anyone's ever called that. I just made that up right now. But there's and maybe someone else did, so don't quote me on it. But there's a ton of cicadas here in Tennessee right now. And I was reading that that they think that the projection is that right now in Tennessee there are 202,000 cicadas per person.
Wow,
which is a lot.
Crazy. I guess it's coming up this way. I'm in the Northeast, but they haven't erupted here yet. But 200,000 to 200,000. I'm sorry, 20,000 to each person.
202,000.
202. And so what happens when you go outside and walk around? Are they just like everywhere?
Oh yeah, walking my dog, I basically have to wear headphones because they're so loud. And then they're just flying into you all the time and just attaching to you. So you got to scrape them off. So there's like a ton on the ground. There's a ton flying around. Everybody's freaking out all the time and wiping off cicadas off them.
Wow.
How's
the dog dealing with that?
It's fine. I'll survive. They don't bite. So if it was bees, I'd be probably in a hazmat suit or something.
Now, how does the dog deal with it?
He's fine. He doesn't even really notice them. Except when they fly right by him, he'll like look at him. Yeah.
Good boy, right. You mentioned psychographics a couple of minutes ago. What's the difference between demographics and psychographics, and how do we use both to get traction on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So if you share that thing that's in there. So yeah, this is the biggest thing that we noticed is that most people are just focusing on the demographics. They're not so much focusing on the psychographics. And the psychographics are like the things that they're doing right now, the actions that they're taking, whereas the demographics are more of, where they located, what business are they in, stuff like that. So if you have both together, that's where we can actually get the perfect fit of who we're reaching out to. So the best client and they're in the market right now.
Gotcha. Okay. I get 30% of my business from LinkedIn, and I'm not doing any direct outreach. I'm doing what I call content marketing. I think that's what it's called by professionals like yourself. So my question is, how do we create content that not only gets a prospect's attention, but shifts their beliefs and actually drives the buyer journey? And also, how can we simplify content creation? I know I get asked all the time by people, Jeff, where do you come up with your content? Well, I'm usually in the shower and I just think about what would benefit my audience, the people that I want to sell to, what would give them something that's useful to them. But can you tell us a little bit about content creation?
Absolutely. So, and we teach this in our Content Mavericks program, but from a high level view, what I've noticed that people are doing is that they will create a post and then think of an idea and then create a post, and they're going in this circle of trying to create attention. Okay. And then over here, then they have this brochure of a profile and they're hoping that they get enough attention for them to somehow then end up buying from them. But the whole thing in the middle is the buyer's journey. And so what we want to do is, instead of trying to create posts that just get views or get attention, let's focus on what are the beliefs that we need to shift. Right. So for, if I was on a call with you, I might have to know, like, okay, he has to believe that outreach is the best strategy, right? That might be something that I have to help you shift on. And so what are those beliefs that you have to shift? And so what that does is it simplifies it, because now you know all the topics you need to talk about, and you can talk about them in different ways. You can use, I call it like linked content. I like to create the newsletters as a longer form piece of content, because people can be subscribers. So you don't have to rely on the algorithm or anything. It'll go right to them and they'll get an email with it as well. But then I'll use short form pieces that talk about things in here to generate the attention, but then drive them to the piece that actually pushes them through the buyer's journey by shifting those beliefs. So by going from like a top-down approach versus bottom-up of creating individual posts trying to get attention, we're figuring out what are the main things that we need this content to do, and then creating based on that.
And what about frequency? How often should we be posting as opposed to a newsletter? I do a newsletter, but I only do that once a month, but I post daily. What should we be doing?
So I've tested this quite a bit, and 2 posts per day seems to be optimum. When I do 3 posts per day, people seem to get mad. Like, I'll get messages of like, hey, you're my entire feed right now. Maybe that's not a bad thing. I've had other people say I'm in their entire feed and that it's a good thing. So, but it seems to be a little bit overwhelming if you do 3 a day. I found that 2 a day is the sweet spot. And then for articles, I do 1 every 2 weeks. I think 1 every week would be best. I even was doing 1 every day at one point, but that was too much. That was like the whole thing. That was the whole day, every day, basically, was just working on that. So basically 1 a week or every 2 weeks, and then posting 2 times a day.
Got it. And what about?
So you basically just have to double what you're doing.
Gotcha. Okay, I can do that.
If you're doing 1 a day and 1 per month, yeah.
for me, I don't take up time during the day most of the time to write posts. I do that all on the weekend, and I use simplify.com to schedule them out. But what about recycling content? Do you have to have new content every single time, or is it okay to reuse content we've used before? And if it is okay, how much time should pass between when I put something on LinkedIn and use that same thing again?
Yeah. So I look at about like 3 to 6 months, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on the post. But I have it set up where I have an assistant that's basically grabbing all my posts as they go, and then they have a scoring system, and they score them. And ones that hit a threshold of like, let's say 7 or higher, then they're going to be put in the queue like 6 months later. Reason is that someone may not have seen your post. And if it's been 6 months, they may have forgotten it by then, right? And so what that allows is that the good content compounds and the bad content fades away. And over the journey, you actually have to make less because you're building up this system of self reproducing content. And we have a weekly review process. So when you're looking at ones that do well, it's also good to see what other types of posts can I make. If you made a little bit of a longer form post, maybe next time you make a shorter form post based on it, or maybe now you change the hook on it, and that's sometimes just enough to make it feel like a completely different post because the hook is super important. Or maybe you make a list about it, or maybe you take different angles, right? So those main topics of the beliefs and the post, how do you take a bunch of different angles at those versus constantly coming up with new ideas?
Brilliant to have somebody tracking which ones are getting the most engagement and continuing to use those. That I'm not doing that. So
yeah, that makes things much easier over time.
Yeah.
And you've been posting for a long time because I've known you for a while, that you could probably grab all your current posts on Facebook, LinkedIn, everything, and then you might be good for a year. Who knows? So, hey, that doubling of every day to twice a day, we may have just solved that with minimal
might be
effort.
easier than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. What about touching base? How often should we touch base during what can, in many instances, be an extended sales cycle? And what's the 3-strike follow-up rule?
So, and also real quick, I'll add a tip in here before, since we're shifting out of the content, is that the people that are engaging with your content, are you engaging back with them? Are you reaching out to the people that engage in your content?
I do engage with them when they're engaging with my post, but in terms of reaching out, you're talking about DMing them? Typically, I don't know. And it sounds like from that question, I should be.
Yeah. So think about this. Because they're having a sales conversation, whether you realize it or not, by engaging with that post, depending on the post, right? If it's something around something you do, then yeah. So, I mean, they're basically showing that they're in the journey because they're interested in that kind of stuff. So, I mean, an easy way to get a ton of leads is just go to those guys and ask them what other stuff you want to see. Right. And then boom, now you have challenges and questions and you have sales conversations, you can move forward. So those are some of the warmest, best ones, is the people that are engaging with your content that just need to be, walked up to. Now, in terms of
wait, because I love
okay,
that.
You want to go into that?
It's very gentle. So as opposed to, hey, I saw you engage with my post. Did you want to talk about some sales coaching? It's, hey, really appreciate that you engage with my post. What else would help you? What other type of content would you like to see? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, exactly. Because they need buyer safety, right? And so when you say like, hey, do you want to get on a sales call? They don't know you that much yet,
That's
right?
when they cross their arms.
Yes, they might not be ready for a sales conversation, but how do you get to the point where you have a better understanding of them and what's going on, right? I can do way more with that than getting them to opt into something. And I've tested this. I still do. I'll test lead magnets that are related to that piece of content versus just seeing what other stuff they want to see. And that one will convert much better usually.
Gotcha. So tell us about the 3-strike rule for follow-up.
Yeah, I don't think I have a 3-strike rule. I don't think I stop at 3. I think what we play with is, so I don't always ask the same thing. Like I'm not always just, hey, just bumping this up, or hey, just following up on this. I change what I'm talking about throughout the journey. So our like playbooks a lot of times will have 7 to 9 messages. But those are all to different things. You have different lead magnets. You have different questions you can ask. You have different things that you can, kind of congratulate them on or encourage them on or give them kudos on. So there's all these different things. I think the most important thing is actually the timing, because I've gotten a bunch of sales from actually continuing to follow up with people, and people are like, "Oh, thanks for following up, with me continuously." And so I think it's more of the timing. I think it's not, you shouldn't every single day bump it up. And I don't know if you'd even have something interesting to say every day that's going to be that relevant if they haven't responded yet. So I like using like 3-day waits and 7-day waits and maybe 12-day waits. And So I think it's more of the timing so much than how many times you reach out.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how often I've given the same advice, that there's an old saying in sales, persistence pays. You don't want to be bothering people every day, but you do want to stay in touch, because sometimes that is the difference between closing a deal and not, just staying in touch. And often it's waiting for the other guy to screw up. And I'll give a quick example. I did a lot of business with Citibank for many years. And I was also, by coincidence, their customer. They had what's called the entire relationship, my business, my personal, everything was at Citibank. And of course, like I think everybody else, I was every day getting direct mail and emails and phone calls from banks that wanted to take my business away. I was always, nope, I'm happy where I am. Thank you very much. And then one time, Citibank screwed up. After years of being their customer, they did something that just so pissed me off that I was like, screw these guys. I'm taking away my business. Of course, they had already stopped doing business with me. Otherwise, I might not have. But at that point, it was like, oh, you know what? This guy's been after me for quite a while. I'm going to talk to him. Actually, it was a woman. I'm going to talk to her and give her my business. So it is that staying in touch gently, and I believe adding value over time, so that when the time comes that people are ready, they want to talk to Nate, or they want to talk to Jeff, or they want to talk to M&T Bank as opposed to Citibank. So I love that. I thought I got the three strike rule from one of your posts. I might have been confused. At any rate, we're going to
take let me know and I'll remove that.
No sweat.
Should not be
we're going to take a 60-second break for a commercial, and we'll be right back from our sponsor, which is me. Hi, I'm Jeff Goldberg, the founder of the Sales Pro Network. For nearly 5 decades, I've been selling, managing, coaching, and training salespeople internationally. And I'm often asked for one-on-one or private coaching, but it does involve a substantial investment. For that reason, I've recently developed the Sales Pro Insider Network community. It works like this. We get together twice a month on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. At the first session of the month, it's you and me, with me taking your questions and giving you the advice and help you need to both prospect and sell more effectively. At the second session of the month, we'll have a guest coach speaking on a fascinating topic that helps sellers like you and me. And of course, we'll do group coaching then too. The best part is the investment is just $27 for the first month, and there's no long-term contract at all. In fact, you can cancel at any time. Go to crushsalesgoals.com. That's CRUSHSALESGOALS.com. I hope to see you there. I'm really excited about this next session. It's this Tuesday night, which is the 28th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And our guest coach is Judy Kane, who is an expert at helping salespeople get rid of head trash, that little voice we have inside our head that's telling us stuff all the time. I actually had the opportunity to work with Judy, and I think everybody who shows up is going to be thrilled with what they learn. And for anybody who's listening to this or watching us live right now, if you either email me at jeff@jgsalespro, reach out to me through LinkedIn or our Facebook group, I'm happy to send you a free pass so that you don't have to pay anything, not even the $27. So please do join us on Tuesday, this Tuesday night coming up right after the holiday. Nate, one of the things that you talk about is something I'm very interested in. I'm always looking to increase the size of my email list, people who want to receive information from me. How can we turn our LinkedIn connections into subscribers to our email list?
Yeah, that seems to be a common thing I've been getting lately. So, because I've seen people approach this in different ways, and some of them are just take like the worst way to do it that some people seem to want to do is they want to use a tool and scrape all the contact emails on there and then just put it directly into their CRM. The issue with that is that they're super cold, and so that's going to kill your deliverability to any like warm prospects and clients that you may have. So don't do that. The best approach I've seen is to use the conversations like we're saying, and then actually ask for so it's multifaceted. The first one is asking people for their email addresses. So that may be an opt-in. That may be after they tell you what they want to see, then be like, great, I put that on my content calendar. If you'd like to know when I make that post, you can give me your email and I'll make sure that you get it. So you could do something like that as one angle. Another one is having the different like lead magnets on your profile that can build the list. But you could scrape them all. You could scrape all those ones and put them in a cold email campaign or reach out to them with something that gets them to respond and opt in, and then move them over to your actual list of where you send out newsletters and prospect or whatever you do there. Another one I like is in the newsletter. If you're making newsletters in the on your LinkedIn newsletter, you can say like, hey, the email version of this has more things in it. right? Or maybe you make maybe that top 10 list that I showed, maybe I put only 5 in there. Then I say, hey, to see the other 5, subscribe so that you can actually get the full version. So more of incentivizing them so that they want to get on the list versus just trying to scrape them and put them in directly. So
yeah, I'm not a big fan of just tossing names because people get pissed off. Now you're getting a lot of unsubscribes and you're wasting your time and theirs.
Yeah, and deliverability is huge right now. Since like February of this year, I think Google did a big thing. So you have to be like less than 1% of spam. So that'll tank it if you put them all in there, most likely.
Perfect. A few days ago, you posted that the more time you spend getting sharp on the weekend, the faster you can go during the week. What do you do on the weekends to get sharp?
So on the weekends, I'm focusing on reviewing. So I'll look at the week, I'll look at content, I'll look at outreach, see why did things do better or why not, because that'll give me things for the new idea. I also do a lot of thinking time to see what percolates of, okay, what is the biggest domino that I can take down this week? I plan my week. So that's a pretty big thing. I have like internal questions, or I have questions that I answer and things, and then I'll make sure my week is all set up. But also on top of that, I focus on doing things that are, maybe that's courses, maybe that's learning, something that gives me a state of curiosity, right? Because we can't be curious and worried at the same time. So if I can set up the weekends that I have things to work on and I have confidence from things that we're working and I'm learning new things, I can position myself to be much more productive just out of curiosity and confidence.
Yeah, I love the idea of sitting around on the weekend and doing nothing, or getting out and having fun and all that stuff. But I find I'm so busy during the week delivering that I do need the weekends to catch up on stuff I couldn't do during the week and doing the type of things that you talked about. How do I improve? How do I think about my business and look for other ways and like that? And you've mentioned more than once how big you are on analytics. For those of us who maybe aren't as good as you at analytics and numbers and metrics, is there a short list of things that we should be analyzing for certain in our LinkedIn approach?
Yeah, so I look at as a math equation, which most growth can be broken down like a math equation. So basically you have your connection rate. So what is and this is mostly outreach. So what's the percentage of people accepting your connection request? What's the percentage of people replying? And then what's the percentage of people showing interest in taking that next step with you, whether it be a call or opting into something? What's that percentage? And so that's how we're always working on that funnel and looking at different campaigns and testing them.
Gotcha. Now, we talked a bit about taking a shotgun approach, and so many people are boasting that they have thousands and thousands and thousands of connections on LinkedIn. One of the things that you say, and I completely agree, is that networking is more than just about adding connections. What do we need to do to effectively network on LinkedIn? Because that's originally what it was devised for, taking the face-to-face networking that we used to do and putting it online. So how can we be more effective with that on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so in terms of just pure networking, of building the network, a lot of that has to do with, I think, just asking if other people in your network need anything and that people. And if someone in your network needs something, what do they do and do they want to be recommended for that? And so you're giving them the opportunity to be recommended. Plus, you're also asking them, if they know anyone that you should know. And that's a lot easier probably if you go up to your first, go through your first connections first, and then possibly the second ones, second degree connections after that.
Gotcha. And you mentioned LinkedIn newsletters before. Is that's the same as articles, right?
So articles basically got turned into newsletters. So when you create a newsletter, now it has to be part of an article, or create an article has to be part of a newsletter.
Okay. So what's the difference between the two?
The thing of the newsletter is more of a way for you to get subscribers, and the article is the piece of content that they're getting.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. And, you can't go more than 10 minutes today without hearing about artificial intelligence. So should we be using AI in our LinkedIn outreach and content creation? And if we should, how do we do that? And if we shouldn't, why not?
Yeah, I think there's a balance there. I don't think that it should totally create all the content. I don't think it should totally create all the messaging. I think it more of helps in the workflow of things. So for example, you can use like ChatGPT if you have that list. Let's say you export it from Sales Navigator and a bunch of ones aren't a good fit in there. The data analyzer in ChatGPT can actually help you filter out and identify who's a good fit versus who's not. So like that's an example of how I'd use it. I'd also use it for like uploading conversations and things like that, so that it can help you get some insights and see some patterns in there early on. You should still look. But yeah, I mean, and I think that it can help with giving you ideas for content and ideas for outreach. But yeah, it's not the end result. It's more of it helps in the middle, in that gray area where you're trying to actually get to where you want to be. Because I noticed something too along the way, and I've been working on a post for it. But have you taken the Myers-Briggs before?
Years ago, yes.
Okay, right. So at the very end, there's a J or a P, right? And so there's judging or perceiving. And perceiving is creative and expanding upon things, and judging is breaking things down. Well, I thought about it, and I was thinking that after we've been working on creative things for a long time, we can still do the mundane, like judging on things, right? And so I noticed that there's like a flywheel in there. If you can be doing the judging till the perceiving kind of refills, per se. And so how you can use ChatGPT on that is basically when you have the creative side down, you can put it in there and then have it give you more ideas. And now you can judge those, right? So that's just an example of how you can continue a flywheel because you're using both components versus just the creative side.
Got it. Yeah. One of the things I'm suggesting to salespeople is that, fine, use ChatGPT or any other AI you want, but I find it's rarely useful to take exactly what it spits out and then use that as the content. I can almost always tell when something was written by a robot, or when it sounds like a robot. So I think you have to take the time to use that as a time saver, but then customize it for your own, to put it into your own voice. Would you agree?
Yeah. Remove all. Yeah. Work on the extra adjectives that it adds and make it more in your tone of voice. And then, over time it might get I'm sure it's going to get better and better and better. So who knows? There might be a stage where it's like that, but I think that we're seeing a big pushback on AI. I think the biggest part too is people are using AI to comment on things. I'm seeing a lot of pushback on that. So
yeah, I've been using AI to help people create email cadences, and for some reason AI thinks that every email should start out with "I hope you're doing great today."
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a dead giveaway. What's the difference between Nate Morse Consulting and Apex Conversions? Those are both companies.
Yeah, so Nate Morse Consulting is that's just me as an individual. So I go and I'll consult bigger companies and help them with a lot of it's usually like growth methodology. But then Apex Conversion, that's my whole team, which they're mostly in Michigan, which is where I moved from about 3 years ago. So they're all in Michigan, but they're the ones that handle like the fulfillment and helping things with that. So they're like the real drivers of a lot of the a lot of the actual strategies that we're doing. And that could be LinkedIn, it could be cold email, it could be, helping bigger companies with really deep account-based marketing. That's a really fun one, especially if they want to get high-level clients. But yeah, so the Nate Morse Consulting is essentially, that's just the me side for consulting.
Got it. Okay. And Nate, you're a LinkedIn expert. Are there any other methodologies you are using or that you're recommending besides LinkedIn to attract new prospects and find new people to speak with?
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing is just going to be, where's your audience at? If they're not on LinkedIn, probably not there. If they're on Facebook, then go for it there. Really, for me, it's just where are they at, and then figuring out the strategy for that. So I like Facebook. I've done pretty well with that. Instagram, I haven't really cracked. Twitter, I've spent quite a bit of time on and have not really cracked for my audience, mostly because the targeting is very difficult on there. Most of the people, not most of the people, but it might be just some kid or whatever with a just a punk, what are those called? The like crypto images. I don't know why I'm forgetting them right now. Yeah, so it's much more difficult in there. I do like cold email though, and cold calling. I think both of those are still good. It's just that I don't think most people really understand how to use it in a way that works well.
Yeah, it really needs to be customized. And it cannot be that you can't say the same thing to everybody. And what you really want to do is, engage the prospect. So I'm with you. And we've got a question from one of the.
I'm big on podcast. I'm big on a podcast too, because I think that as more people become content creators, access to audience is going to be harder because people are going to subscribe to less people to listen to, right? So how do you speak to other audiences? In addition, so I think that podcast is a great way to introduce new people, whether you're doing your own or you're going somewhere with going on somebody else's, and the content you get from it, right? Now you can go and put that on your channel, so it gives you a bunch of assets that are helpful as well. Anyways,
Yeah,
what was that? Yeah, what's that question?
I like that too, Nate. I like being the interviewer and being the one who's being interviewed. I'm very big on that myself. Yeah, we have a question from Michael North. He says, can you share a bit about how to flood your LinkedIn inbox with whale clients in 20 minutes a day?
Yeah, so that's a training that's on my profile. So he must have seen that. So yeah, I mean that has a lot to do with what we're talking about here. There's different strategies in there as well that talk about, like, if we're going after a really big business, a big part of that training is recognizing that it's not so much that the deal is more complex that makes working with a bigger company difficult. It's more of, how do we find the person that's going to champion what we're actually talking about and challenge the status quo, whereas a lot of employees are focused on keeping their job more than they are at changing the status quo. So how do you speak to that person, but also recognizing that you're talking to somebody who's in a company, and so they're most likely not the expert, and so they need what we were talking about earlier, making them the hero of their own journey and you being the guide. That's what they want more than ever when they're working with the company, because they're basically just tasked with finding the solution. They're new at it. So they're trying to figure out, who to go with, all this kind of stuff. So if you can roll the red carpet out to that individual, you have a much, much higher chance.
Love that. And I think another part of the going after whales is what we're going to cover Tuesday night in the Sales Pro Insider Network with Coach Judy. It's head trash. I find that a lot of sales.
I like that term, by the way. Head trash is a fun term. Yeah, it's a fun term.
Yeah. Well, it's take out the head. I'll give you an example. So, and I use this one all the time, but this time of year, I'm starting to get a bunch of calls from salespeople saying, Jeff, what am I going to do? It's almost summer. Everybody knows that you cannot sell during the summer. And I always ask them the same question, Nate, even though I know the answer, but I ask them, why can't you sell during the summer? Do you know what the answer is?
What do you think?
It's because everybody's on vacation. That's what salespeople, you can't sell during the summer because everybody is on vacation. Did you take a vacation last summer, Nate?
No, I
Neither did I. And the summer before, I did go away for 10 days, but it was 10 days.
I'll probably work a little bit on Memorial Day, even, at least a little bit in the morning.
Well, it's supposed to rain here in New York, so I might be doing that too. But my
also,
point is that, people are not on vacation all summer long. That's head trash. It's a thought that we have that prevents us from doing what we need. So we need to get that head trash. Same thing at the end of the year. You can't sell the week between Christmas and New Year's, or you can't sell after Thanksgiving. It's just a thought in our head. So I hope that people will join us on Tuesday night and learn from Coach Judy about how to get rid of that.
And also, just to add on to that for real quick, and then we can go into everybody's, because they're blowing us up with messages here, which is great. Keep doing it. Is that if you're on vacation, or like, let's just say Memorial Day. All right. Everybody's action item for Memorial Day is to look at how many times you see people on their phone, right? If we're reaching out to them on their phone, like, I don't know about you, but I think I do more of my leisure, scrolling and stuff when I'm not working. Right. I think I buy more things at night than I do during the day, Absolutely. And so if they're on the phone then, and you're selling, in a way that they get an email, they get a LinkedIn message or whatever, you might actually have better luck during holidays.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of doing what the other guy or gal doesn't. So if everybody says you can't sell the week between Christmas and New Year's, I'm going to talk to people the week between Christmas and New Year's because they're more relaxed and they don't have 8 gazillion guys like you and me bugging them. It's easier to break through. So I'm with you 1,000,000%. Here's another question. Bruce says, 2 interesting things that you've brought up so far. How about instead of a suit, like a uniform, which includes a golf shirt with your company logo on it? And the second thing is, I like to find, I'm not sure what that means, Fitz. I think Bruce is talking about the profile picture. So what do you think about, instead of a suit, something like your company logo on a shirt or something like that?
Yeah, that'd be fine. And I still do think a suit is fine, but I do think a suit might be, I think we're in more like a casual realm of sales than we were before. And so the guy with the suit and everything doesn't command the same respect. I mean, if you're in a boardroom, then you got to have the best suit there. So that's a whole different scenario. But online, it's different because, like, I'm wearing a t-shirt when I'm scrolling through or whatever, and so I think the golf shirt could tone it down a little bit. I don't know if they'll even see your logo. I don't think the logo even matters as much if you have one on or not, because they already are going to know, like, what company you work for when they go and see all the other stuff on your profile. But yeah, I think that could tone it down a little bit.
So once again, I need to do some work and change that profile picture, because I'm
different background too. Probably the white background is the biggest one. I
am in a suit and a tie, and I think that probably just says to people, well, here's an old guy who might be out of touch.
Yeah, maybe. So for Bruce, it looks like maybe you need to look at it directly in YouTube. Because I think it cut it off for us.
Yeah, that's what he said. That YouTube cut off the wording, but I can't be here talking to you and in YouTube at the same time.
Oh,
Michael
Bruce, break it up. Bruce, break it up. Send the rest of it in another one. After
Michael says he loves make the client the hero of their own journey. Any thoughts on how to do that?
Yeah, so that's what we were talking about before with finding because you have to find someone on the journey, and then if you're preparing them and helping them, because here's the thing is that they want to be the hero. If they're working at a big company, if we're talking about the whale side still, they want to be the person that found the right solution, and they want to be smart on it and feel like they have someone at their behind their back that they can basically refer to, and they're going to help them through whatever they're going through, right? So that's going to make them the hero, is they actually have to win the journey. And so you can prepare them for that and, guide them. That's where you have to be the guide, almost like Yoda, right? How, Luke wouldn't have gotten there without Yoda, right? So how do we be the Yoda to them?
Yeah. And so often I find that salespeople are.
Did Yoda find Luke, or did Luke find Yoda?
Well, Luke found Yoda, didn't he? Wasn't he sent to wherever the planet?
Oh, yeah.
He did. Alderaan, but
yeah, not Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
I'm old enough that I remember when that first came out, but I don't remember what planet Yoda was on. If anybody is listening right now and has the name of that planet, you win a prize. Let's see. Michael North says, I love reaching people when they're on the beach chillaxing or on their toilet or in bed. I'm not sure how we target them on the toilet. They're looking at their email or social media or answering their phones at off hours. Absolutely, Michael. I'm not sitting during the day and scrolling through TikTok or LinkedIn or anything else. The only thing I'll do during the day, what I call prime selling time, the hours that you can actually be speaking with prospects or delivering, is I might check my LinkedIn feed to see if anybody's engaging with my post, but I save that stuff for the evening and the weekends 100%.
Yeah, not everybody's as disciplined as you. I bet some people have like 20% of their scroll time is on the toilet, who knows?
I'm embarrassed to say on the toilet, it's TikTok. I'm not on LinkedIn on the toilet because, I can do those quick hits and get on and get off. Bruce says, I wanted to mention that in my business, I try to find out if the prospect is a mutual fit or if it is a good marriage between us. Well, I think, Bruce, that's every business. We want to make sure that we're making good fits. And I want to come back to what Nate was saying a second ago, which is make them the star. So often I find salespeople, when they're speaking to prospects or in their outreach, there's a lot of I statements in there. It's about how great my company is and how much we can help you. And of course, we do want to share, how we can help people. But I find the less I statements we make, the better off we are. And my goal is, how do I make my prospect feel special? Because most people don't feel special most of the time. And if I pay attention to them and make them the star instead of me being the star, and by the way, I love being the star of the show. I'm a stand-up comedian. I'll be doing stand-up.
So you made this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my goal is to make you the star of the show when I'm interviewing you. But yeah, it's how do I make the prospects feel special and appreciated, as opposed to, let me tell you why we're the greatest company in the world. Michael has another question. What's your take on using creative subject lines on cold email or LinkedIn intros?
Depends on how creative. I have definitely thought some things were creative, and they were so creative that they missed the mark. So there is a line there. Yeah, no, definitely. Because that's the first impression, right? So creativity is important. They could be, wow, that was creative, right? But we really want to focus on how does it make them feel, right? If they feel like that was creative, I want them to feel like, whoa, like this person already, I feel like they know me,
Got it. Okay.
But you can add creativity into that approach. Just make sure the foundational approach is good.
Gotcha. Okay. Nate, for those who are interested in speaking with you, possibly working with you, I'm going to share my screen, but this will be converted to a podcast. Would you tell the people who are going to be listening the best way to reach you?
Yep. So you can either go to natemorse.com. You can get a profile audit. There's different resources on there for you. I post all my articles there. The more in-depth ones, obviously email has a little bit more. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on Instagram, although I feel like LinkedIn is going to be a better spot, or the website is going to be the best. So yeah, LinkedIn, you can just look for Nate Morse. You can find me there. It should be /conversion marketing at the end for the handle. And yeah, natemorse.com, NATEMORSE, not MORIS, like people were thinking when they probably heard it. So yeah.
Got it. And that was my father's middle name, and he always had to do the same thing. It's not Morris, it's Morse. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance with us so generously. I truly appreciate it. And I will end as I always do. Gang, please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend. Have a safe holiday, everyone. Thanks again, Nate.
Yep. Thanks for having me.